Jake Still, welcome to the program. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I love what you do. You help people with their unnecessary items and you help get it out of the home for the most part. So you're basically a junk removal service, junk rescue. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so basically, you know, we're in a consumer-based business for the most part, and everything we do is like speed and convenience, right?
Hmm.
People can get rid of their stuff on their own. Nobody wants to. Yeah, nobody
Yeah.
also wants to get rid of stuff that they paid for, right? So we really make that as easy as possible, and really just help. Again, it's really an experience more than it is just a service. Um, because like I said, you could go hire, Joe Schmo with a cigarette hanging out to do the job, and maybe it won't show up on time, maybe it might damage something. So I think that's a lot where home services are going is just that experience driven service. And we make it easy just to make more space inside your home.
They say, I say they, it's when you read articles and so forth. The experts say that when we remove clutter and junk from our lives, we feel better. Do you hear that from your customers ever? Like, oh my gosh, what a weight lifted off. Thanks for getting rid of this stuff.
Yeah, all the time. And I don't know if you ever read like 2 Second Lean by I think it's Paul Akers, David Akers. But it's all about removing waste in the
Mm,
manufacturing process, right? And that's wasted time, wasted space, wasted energy. And I talk to my guys and our clients all the time about it, right? It's the less you have, depending on how less you have,
yeah.
uh, can be super like relieving, right? Less stress, less worries. And again, it goes for actual physical things, but it works for mental things as well. So clients talk about it all the time. It's like purging. It's kind of addictive when
Yeah.
you start doing it. So yeah, they say it all the time.
Yeah. Sometimes if you have too much stuff, the experts will say every week you should fill a trash bag full of unwanted things and get rid of it. That would be a
Mhm.
slow way of getting rid of stuff. There was a great movie years ago called The Shawshank Redemption,
Oh
and
yeah.
the star of the movie got out of prison that way, a little dirt at a time.
Mhm.
Okay. And, but what's great about what you guys do is you solve a problem really quick. Cause I imagine within just a few hours in most cases, if it's organized on the homeowner end, you can go in and out and get rid of unwanted things that really can make it difficult for them to get around their garage, their home, their basement, whatever, and also mentally feel better after they get rid of it. Even though they have to pay to remove it, it's still therapeutic.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are understanding like, you know, your time is valuable. So you don't want to be cleaning out the garage on a Sunday, right? You want to be enjoying time with your family. But also like when you're going through your own stuff, it's sentimental. So it takes you a lot longer to dig through and look at every little thing, especially when like we do estates with family members. It's our job to make it as easy as possible, but we'll also go in and source separate, which is also a really nice benefit. So whether that's donations, recyclables, but like even when we take it, so the job's not done once we load the truck. We'll go take it to whatever facility we need to. And if they don't accept it, that's our problem now. It's not gonna we're not gonna call you back and ask for more money or anything like that. It's really just making it as easy as possible. Because again, nobody really wants to be spending time doing that. And obviously, with more and more sustainable practices are coming more and more important as well. So they want to make sure that they're not contributing to the landfills, with
Sure.
a lot of stuff that they have. Yeah.
I understand you're an entrepreneur. You love small business. Why the junk business of all businesses, right? You could be a plumber, a CPA, an attorney, a roofer. I don't know. You could plow snow, whatever. Why junk?
So I love this question for a lot of things, right? Because you know everything comes down to an experience that you had in your past that leads to what you do now. So in college, I actually worked for two of the large national franchises doing this, as an employee.
No.
Um, and my degree was in marketing, and I was going to graduate. And I told my the owner at the time, like, hey, like I can't do this anymore. I got to start looking for a career. And he's like, "Well, do you have a job lined up?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "All right, why don't you do sales and marketing for me? That's your background, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I stayed up there that summer. I met a girl who I lived with that summer, who's now my fiance. Um, and I ended up actually doing sales and marketing, but then I ended up doing hiring. I ended up kind of running that franchise a
Mm,
little bit for operations while I was there. I was making $9 an hour, fresh out of college doing it. And I had friends in the medical industry at the time that were making a lot of money. So I was like, I want to go do that. So I chased that. I did that for 2 years. I sold aesthetic lasers to plastic surgeons and dermatologists. But growing up, I've always worked like manual labor jobs. Like that's why I did that job in college. I don't know what it is, but I like getting the workout at the same time I work with my hands. But I wanted to go to college. I like being a white collar guy, but I really thought there was a niche that I could be a white collar guy in a blue collar space. Um,
mm.
and me and my brother in law were driving up to a Yankees game, and so I'm a Phillies fan, live right outside of Philly. And he's from North Jersey, so he's a Yankees fan. And we were making small talk as you do, and he was like, "What do you want to do?" And what would you do if you could do one thing? And I just like this space. And I've always wanted to be more of an entrepreneur. I was doing cold calls for the longest time, and I was good at sales, but wasn't happy doing it. Um, and that conversation kind of fizzled out. 2 weeks later, he's like, "Yo, congrats, we're partners." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Remember that business idea? Like, I did it. Like, I filed the license." And I was like, "I don't know why you did that. I didn't agree to it." Uh, and then a year later, our license, it takes a year to get your license in New Jersey, and they cut my medical division. And that same month, the license got approved. So we were like, "All right, let's go all in on this and build the business." I was able to live at home with my parents, build up credit card debt, and it's just kind of something that my experience led me in college, right? And also, again, I really liked what these companies were doing from a marketing standpoint, which obviously that was my degree. And I just thought there's a way that I could do it in the South Jersey market. And we talked a little bit on it, but the goal is to go national with the brand and the concept as I continue to grow it. And my brother-in-law is my partner still, so yeah, he's a partner in this as well.
Yeah, so you're having so much fun, you're helping people, you wanna help more people by getting people into your business as a franchisor for those franchisees. I know that's coming down the road. I know you don't have a lot of information to share, but tell me how that, came about in a little more detail, because it's one thing to own and operate your own small business, but then
Mm,
to attract people and then to have to put together a system and then have to deal with the government because there's rules and regulations.
mm,
It's a totally different business now because when you're running the small business as the owner operator, um, that's one thing. And I know you take your experience there and you put it into the system, but now a franchisor, speaking of white collar, you're really taking the blue out of the collar there when you're the
oh
franchisor.
yeah. So to be clear on this too, one of the companies I worked for was College Hunks, and
Mm,
they wrote a book, Effortless Entrepreneur. So I read it, and in 2 years they did 2 million right in the first 2 years, and they franchised. So I said that's our benchmark, that's our goal,
yeah.
and we did the same thing. Actually, we actually franchised in year two,
Wow.
after at the end of year two, and we got it. We paid 100 grand, did our FTD, and you said the word systems, right? Okay, we didn't have many systems. I didn't realize that, I was carrying a lot of the load. It was, mainly me as far as in the operations doing a lot of it, right? And my partner, my brother-in-law doing all the back end.
Yeah.
So
And it's all
it,
in here,
yeah,
right? It's fine.
yeah, yeah,
It's all safe up here in Jake's head.
yeah. So it backfired pretty quickly,
Mm,
right? So we learned that, um, and then the next thing happened. Now that fear of failure kind of set in over the next 4 or 5 years after that, where we kept working on systems, over perfecting it, right? And at a certain point again, yeah, if you get bit by the dog, sometimes you gotta, try to pet it again, I think, right? So like
yeah.
we are finally at a stage where we're not 100% where we want to be, but we'll never probably be, right? So we got to take that shot again. So we're building it out. But one of the things, we talk about franchising, it's like, you know, it's a way you don't need as much capital, right? You can scale a lot faster with it.
Mhm.
There are different issues with it, of course. Um, but it's something that, like, my goal is always to build something bigger than just me. And I'm a firm believer in, doing franchise as well as corporate stores, because we need to be able to build opportunities for our employees, right? So whether it's franchisee or corporate, I don't know if you ever read the E Myth, but you got to build the franchise prototype, regardless of what you plan to franchise or not. And that's a way you can scale. So that's the goal. And if I say anything, or the main thing I want to get across is it's for our employees need a growth path. Yeah, that's the most important thing for me. And obviously, we want to bring other franchisees in and great partners that can help not just run a business, but add value and input from their experiences to grow it. Um, but my biggest thing that motivates me is my employees. Like, really, if I don't build something for them, if I build for myself, one, what am I doing morally? But two, uh, why would they stick around? Right? Yeah, you have to build something for them.
I agree. So very familiar with the E-Myth. I know Michael Gerber. He's a friend of mine. He actually doesn't live that far from me. He used to live in California. He now lives in Houston, Texas, or outside of Houston. And here's a bonus for everybody. A number of episodes ago, here on Contractor Stories, I interviewed Michael Gerber talking about the E-Myth and small businesses. So it's right here on this podcast as well. So Jake, you're on the same podcast channel as my good friend Michael Gerber. E-Myth is the Bible for entrepreneurship, and if you don't know
Mhm.
what it is, you need to pick up a book. I think he's got 25 or 26 published books under that brand, and he's still going strong. He's 86 years old, I think, and it's it's just a classic book. Franchising is a different animal, but it's great because now you get to help other people do what you do, Jake. You are helping them become entrepreneurs themselves, um, or at least small business owners. And I say that carefully because
Mhm.
within a franchise system, the franchisee has to stay within bounds, and that's part of the deal because you're providing the system, the framework. So
Mhm.
you want them to be entrepreneurial, but not too much where they're like, "Well, I want to change stuff," and you're like, "Well, we got
Yeah.
to keep it like this." But they get to be small business owners. They get to build something of their own with your help, with all your tools, with your branding and your systems. That's why it's so important to get all that together. And I think it's exciting because not only do you have corporately owned stores in that case, but you also have these business units that will be popping up around the country,
Mhm.
and you're helping that individual and their families. And so I think it's more than business for you. It's certainly about developing people, whether they're your own employees or the franchisee.
Yeah. And so what I've learned more recently, and we talked a little bit before this, right, on the wisdom as you age and you go through experiences, right? Um, and I'm really learning the value of community, right? And building something with a team with a shared vision. And one of my things that I really think is big in building this, if I had to give you an honest answer, am I passionate about junk removal? Um, I love my business. I love the people we get to work with. I love our clients. But it's more that I love, again, as you just said, that I love working with people and having a chance where I can develop them. And that's what we do. And I think more than anything else, my personal opinion, I think a lot of people talk about this, but I believe traditional schooling has failed in many different ways, especially with practical skills. So right now we spend a lot of time in our LMS, so learning management software, in building out obviously trade tools of the trade, right? Things to do the job, but a lot more soft skills and not a lot of practical skills. So I wanted, like, if people don't know my industry, right, and they just know, hey, Jake owns a junk company, right? They're gonna be like, oh, Jake's kind of a junk man, he's a trash man, right? And people in the business world right now, like, no, they're business professionals, right?
Mhm.
They're entrepreneurs. I want our employees to go home, or our franchisees and everything to go home like, wait, why are you talking about, you know, um, whether it be anything financial literacy, gross margins, net margins, understanding EBITDA, right? All those things. Like, I think you work at a junk company. Like, we share a P&L with our guys, right? Like transparency and teaching them skills that hopefully, like, if they don't grow within junk rescue, they need to grow as a person or an entrepreneur. Like, that's our goal. Um, and I think there's something to be said if you're able to provide that value, which is like very genuine and not just about making the company money. It builds a really stronger, community and connection, which is our ultimate goal. Um, and as we build this, because also it's a lot more fun that way. Yeah. So.
Absolutely. Um, Prior to coming on the program, we had sent you some questions, and one of the questions was, did you know when you were younger you were going to be in this type of business? And you said no. um, which makes sense because when we're young, we want to do other things. I wanted to be a stuntman. I don't know
Mhm.
why. I'm afraid of heights and I don't like getting hurt. And I'm really not that athletic and that good. But when you're young, you want to do certain things. Also ask question though, superpower. So Jake, what is your superpower? One thing that you're like, you know what? I'm really good at this.
So, I think there's 2 that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have the first one, and that is grit, right?
Mhm,
Where I think, you gotta have it. There's so many late nights. A lot of people talk about balance, and in the early days, without the wisdom, right? It's easy to talk about balance later in life when you learn how to be more effective and
yeah.
execute more. In the early days, you don't, right? And I've had plenty of breakdowns, both personal with family and everything else. And to be able to pick yourself back up, right, and compose yourself and keep going. I forget who I heard this from, but it was someone talking about mentoring. It's like if you don't feel like you're going bankrupt in the first couple of years, every other month kind of thing, you're probably not doing it right. Like, yeah, there's very few stories where it's just instant success, right? So I think that's the first thing on it, just being able to keep driving, believing the vision when nobody else does, right? I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs have that. And then my number two one would be like, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs have some ADD as well,
Oh
where like
yes.
it's just being able to just unlimited ideas to invent, right? But you really need someone, and I don't know, yeah, obviously you're probably familiar with like the traction model, right? Integrators and
Mhm.
visionaries. Like having that number two, right? To have somebody, which my partner helps me a lot too, right? To okay, 100 great ideas, we can only take one,
Mm.
right? So I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs probably have that, and you need someone to balance that, right? Where you can have that number two to help filter your ideas and execute them.
Absolutely. Speaking of people who are successful and mentors, people who've done some things in executing, you're part of the Home Service Freedom Group, aren't you?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, with Tommy Mello. And
Yeah.
when you're part of groups like that, you can really learn from others who've been down the road. That's why I like to do this podcast because I can bring people on who have done great things. But then again, there's so many people out there who are new to the game and you might just be a few months ahead of them
Yeah.
and you can help them. And so for all the people out there who don't have the years of wisdom, and I will say I have a lot of time under my belt and everything is so much easier because you just build on your foundation.
Mhm.
Um, you want to join groups, you want to find a mentor, you want to read. Readers are leaders, right? And you want to work hard. And I don't know if there is balance. If you want to be the best at anything, the best quarterback, best golfer, the best surgeon, the best business owner in your space, the best you in anything, marathon runner, whatever it is, then you have
Mhm.
to put all in. If you're putting it all into that, you're not going to have balance. But then again, I will warn people at some point, don't waste your youth on just that one thing because even though you don't think you'll have the regret, it's likely when you're older, you might say, I spent 30 years doing that one thing and I'm well respected. I've won awards and I've got millions in the bank, but I didn't get to go mountain biking, rock climbing, skiing, or go on a cruise or whatever it is, and now I have trouble walking or whatever, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
injured or old, or something happens where all of a sudden the doctor says you got 6 weeks to live, and you're like, well, wait a second, I'm only 50. Oh well,
Mhm.
and so that's advice I'll give younger people for sure. Work hard, but also find time to do other things because we're all living longer. You can work until you're 70 now anyway, so you know.
Mhm. Well, there's another book I really like, Essentialism by George McCown.
Mhm.
Um, and he talks a lot about that, and the one lesson I really took away is like lesson that there's always a trade off,
Mhm.
right? You're always going to be sacrificing one thing for another. You can't have it all. You can do anything, but you can't do everything type of mindset. Um, and I think it's the paradox, right, of a lot of entrepreneurs. At least I can relate to, right, is you work so hard to avoid regret. But at the same time, that work in it in itself is creating regret, right? Because there's a lot of things I didn't do or time I had to give up, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just, but you can't avoid it. You can only limit it, right? So, especially if you want to be great. So it's
Mhm.
tough, really
It
tough.
it's it is tough. We're kinda cursed. The problems with humans versus animals, take the deer, the rabbit, the bear.
Mhm.
They're instinctive. Um, we're complicated. We're too smart for our own good. Um, I mean, the suicide rate of a deer is probably nothing, right? So why do we have anxiety, depression, and suicide? Because we complicate things. And I'm sure if
Mhm.
you go back 5,000 years, we didn't have those problems to the point of the junk. We didn't have all the stuff in our way, right? It was
Oh yeah,
simple. We woke up, we survived, and went back to sleep. We got up, we ate if we could find food, reproduced, and did it again, just like animals. But
yeah.
we've compounded. Speaking of getting better and better and better, it's amazing what we can do today. And I think we're a curse to ourselves a little bit. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We're in America, it's a first world country. We're a leader in the world. And we should be getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3:15, depending, and
Mhm.
work until midnight and then get 3.5 hours of sleep again. Um, which I don't recommend, by the way. And
Yeah.
push, 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 push until too much anxiety. I ended up in the emergency room. I I know once, but maybe twice. Thought I was having a heart attack. I was in my early 40s, healthy,
Mhm.
anxiety, panic attacks.
Yeah.
Building my business, panic attacks, anxiety. They rushed me in. I'll tell you one thing, if you're a guy who's 40 years old and you go to the emergency room and you tell them you have chest pains, even if you just stubbed your toe, tell them you got chest pains. They'll take you right in.
Mhm.
Hook you up to the machine and so forth. And they said, "No, there's nothing wrong with your heart. You're just, stressed out, dude." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
And, happens to the best of us. Some people manage it better, Jake, than others. But just some advice for everybody. Try to get balance, and it's really hard, but maybe you don't wanna be the best at everything and then not have experience anywhere else. Maybe you wanna taste all the food on the plate. It
Mhm.
depends. But you can't have it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask Tom Brady. He had a wife. Whoops. He
Yeah.
promised now I think the biggest mistake he made if he wanted to keep her is he went back on his promise. She was patient, and
Mhm.
he said, "Well, the guys need me." That's what he said. He said, "The team needs me." Yeah, but you retired." "Nah, I gotta go
Mhm.
back. They need me." "Well, what about the family?" It's really interesting. I mean, when you think about it, I'd love to interview him and say, "Did you think before you said that to her that the team needs you?"
Yeah.
But that's how he felt, and he's known as what? One of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best athletes of all time, one of the
Mhm.
biggest superstars of all time, not a father and not a husband. I'm not saying he's not a good one. I'm just saying
Mhm.
that's what he's known for. Is that what you wanna be known for? The junk guy, the the franchisor, the builder of people? Maybe. But then again, you're at a stage of life where that's it, and maybe it'll change too. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I think let's go with the Tom Brady thing. If internally he's like, I only want my dad or my son to call me a good father or a good son, right?
Mhm.
And that can be enough. I don't care what the masses say, right? I think I can relate to that where if I can have a few guys that said like, I had a major, major impact on that, right?
Yeah.
Because I think about people when I started my business or just about life, there's a handful of moments you just don't forget, like a certain teacher or a coach or something. And you can kind of just pinpoint like, that had an impact on the rest of my life, what they did. Um, that type of feeling is what I hope to replicate um, a handful of times, right? And obviously, the more the merrier, but that's really what will make it worth it in the long term, I think. And then obviously being able to provide for those people and your family,
Mhm.
like that's super important. Um, and I think that's you also have to know when enough is enough, right? When do you have enough that will make you happy? Like the law of diminishing returns, chase, chase, chase. It's a slippery slope.
That's very hard. A lot of people don't know when to stop, Jake. So what's really interesting, and I've done a lot of thought on this, as you can probably imagine with
Mm,
how I'm talking about this. The only thing I can think of where there's no end here in the United States to something is making money. You can only eat
mm,
so much, only lose so much weight. You can only build so
mm,
much muscle. You can only run so far. You can only live so long, but there's no end to making money.
mm,
And so, like I said, the animals out there, they're not fat. They're generally not too skinny. They generally are all balanced. Like a deer's a deer. Have you ever seen a huge difference in deer? No. There's not like, oh, look
mm,
at the obese deer over there, and look at the one that's really skinny. They're pretty much all the same in that general area. Same with rabbits and bears and birds. We're all different. And it's interesting. So one of the things is once we get the taste of this success of building businesses and making money, there is no end to it. There's no law against being a multi-trillionaire.
mm.
There isn't. So it's but that's the only thing I can think of. Can you think of anything else, Jake, where it's like, okay, there's no end? Almost everything is finite in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, and I wanna say, like, something, like, spiritual, right?
Well,
Where,
okay.
and again, things that, like, come and go, like peace, right? If you could have unlimited peace, right, you would obviously want that, but it doesn't work that way, right? It comes and goes, and you're constantly
Yes.
fighting for it,
And
right?
you can't control that though. So you can control how much money you make, and,
Mhm.
money is tangible, but other things
Yep.
aren't.
Knowledge, wisdom, like, there's probably the other ones kinda thing, like,
That's endless, and that's great
yeah.
though. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but people aren't judged on that as much. Like,
Right.
people will say, "That guy's a billionaire," and the guy's like, "Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been working my tail off for 35 years to become a billionaire," and that's his Super Bowl. That's his
Mhm.
sport. Um But a lot of people don't say, "Hey, you see that professor over there who wrote 50 books on philosophy, and he's
Yeah.
constantly educating? He doesn't get quite the same cred, right? It's not the same
Yeah.
thing. It's kinda like,
Unless they're all bestsellers and there's money attached to it, right? Like, there's gotta
yeah,
be
yeah,
the
yeah,
metrics.
and it's interesting. So, I like the fact that for you, it doesn't seem to be all about the money. It's really you have this desire to help others, which is great. Some people don't. Some people just sit on the couch saying, it's all about me. You're like a teacher, right? You wanna teach, you wanna
What
coach,
I
you wanna grow, develop.
It's funny when you say that. Yeah, those are the 2. 'Cause, here's the thing, I'm realistic with financial success, financial freedom, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's certain metrics that I don't believe I would be able to achieve and influence as much, which I actually think it's different now probably with the way influencers are or anything else, but with teaching and coaching, right? So, I've always been more entrepreneurial, but, like, the other 2 jobs I would love are as a coach and a teacher.
There you go, and so that shows that you want to help other people in your business model, which is great. I think everyone should have to pass an exam and get a permit to be a business owner, meaning as a person,
Yeah.
not not as an entity, as a person where, the state interviews you and says, "Okay, here we go, Jake. This is the deal. Are you a good person? And are you willing to help others grow and so forth?" Because if everyone had your philosophy as a business owner, um, society would probably be better. There'd be more growth in people, and there would be a better economy. There'd be more, production. We have a lot of freeloaders in this country that aren't doing much, and it's the whole thing's a philosophy. And I know a lot of people who are like you, and what comes first isn't the money or the status and the brand. It's, I wanna help others become successful, so I've got this model that can be replicated in markets across the country, and we can plug them in, but you have to find the right people, Jake, right?
Yeah, and you gotta build the right systems because you can
Mm,
have the best intent in the world, but I'm still realistic in using money, especially in a business, as a financial measurement, right? Because there is, you have to understand your margins, especially on a percentage basis, right? Um, to know what do you have a viable, actual service and product that you can actually give people, financial freedom. Because here's the thing, like you need enough financial freedom, right, to not be corrupted, so you can do the right thing, right? There is a point where financial stress is real, and it can cause you to do some things that you
Mhm.
shouldn't have done. So I think there's a lot of like perfect world scenarios, and you have to balance it, and that's what makes it so hard, right? Like it's not an easy game.
Sure. What's your biggest regret?
I've got many, right? I think because when you talk about people, it's actually like one of my biggest regret and biggest like I've lost a lot of really, really good, talented people from being a poor leader, right?
Mm,
In the early days, right? And these are guys that like they were cheerleaders of the brand. They would work till midnight, even if you didn't ask them to, right? They would sing your praises outside of work. Um, but like, you talk about having good intent, but like, you still have to build a good system. So have a career, they have to be able to grow into something, right? You have to have fair systems, fair HR, fair policies, right? Because you learn that perception is reality, and you got to really level up your emotional intelligence to learn how to manage conversations, right? And be a manager and realize that you're going to be viewed differently as the boss, as the owner, and everything else, even if you're on the trucks with them till midnight, right? Like,
no.
I had an employee set our uniform on fire and put it in the company Snapchat, right? I've had multiple employees try to fight me, like call me out to fight me, um,
Wow.
over things that are just lack of communication. And some of those things, like for example, I had to let go of an employee, rightfully so, but he's got money, he's got bills. He wasn't ready for that, right? That he had to get let go. And, I get it. I get the stress of that. And I see these people because they're all local for the most part, right? I see them outside of work. And then, I shake hands and I say hi. And they're kind of like shocked on it. And I'm like, it's never anything personal. I'm trying to do my best to make the best decisions for the team. And I failed often. And I turned A players into C players, D players, F players multiple times early on
Oh,
because I was a young kid. I didn't know how to manage, right?
yeah.
It's a management is the one of the least rewarding, um, like, I feel like positions
Mhm.
where everyone says, "Oh, that guy's such a bad manager, bad person." No, management's really hard, and people don't realize that. And that's why, like, the good managers, that really good ones, few and far between, like, they deserve a lot of credit because they are well skilled to do that well.
I agree, and Jake, some of the best managers aren't the entrepreneur who started the company. Most great entrepreneurs, from my experience, are not great managers. Steve Jobs is a great example.
Mhm.
He was a visionary, smart guy, he developed things, didn't have patience for people,
Yeah.
and you see it a lot where there's really great entrepreneurs, and they look around the room and they're like, "Why aren't you working as hard as me? Why aren't you as smart as me?" Well, it's because they're not you. They're
Mhm.
employees, a lot of them, and they have the
Yeah.
employee mindset. But if you can find a great manager, that's terrific because then you can be the visionary and you don't have to be a good manager. You just
Mhm.
have management between you and the people. So
Yeah.
you're not infecting the people. Ray Kroc, who took McDonald's from one restaurant to, you know, what is now a multi-billion dollar company.
Mhm.
In the beginning, he was asked, should you be the front person on TV?
Mhm.
Basically be the company person. Dave Thomas did it with Wendy's years ago. There were these Wendy's commercials, and the founder, Dave Thomas, was on TV. And Ray Kroc said, I'm not likable. So they created Ronald McDonald. And that's the
Yeah.
story. He knew he wasn't. He was difficult, but I guess he had the right management. And so I believe the best entrepreneurs are not the best managers, and if you understand that, that's fine. Stay in your lane and get people in that lane because you need all those down people there that are down line to be able to run the company for you.
Well, and I think that is we talked about wisdom earlier, right? And I think that's my next evolution for growth is really understanding, like, they always say, like, don't be the smartest person in the room, right? Finding great people around you
Mhm.
and really being able to manage a team and build a team like that, right? And put the people in the best seat, right? Best position to succeed. is really what I think my next part of this will be, right? And realizing like I can't be everything to everyone. I think those are the inconsistencies I have from all the ideas I have, right? And the constant changes. And they say a lot of entrepreneurs can live in chaos, right?
Yeah.
That is an unfair ask to ask your employees to live in chaos. Um, and that's why I think a good manager is also someone that's really, really consistent, really true to their word, right? Um, and I think that's where, that's not something I'm natural at. So I've gotten better because I had to,
Yeah.
right? But I still don't think I'm a natural fit for that. It was very hard for me to become that way. And it took employees lighting myself on fire, my uniform on fire. And this is like first year, one or two, right? People trying to fight me. Um, and just not knowing, I was really just trying my best, but I didn't know what I was doing. Like, it's just
Well, yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah. Just because you're a good quarterback doesn't mean you can be a linebacker or a
Yeah.
receiver.
Mhm,
You're good at executing and throwing the ball. That doesn't
mhm.
mean you should be in the end zone that often. Now you can be if you're in the right position. You just run the ball. But my point is know what you're good at and then fill the other positions with people who are really good at, either blocking or
Yeah,
receiving the ball or whatever so you can do what you do well. Because if you don't have people to catch the ball, you could be the best quarterback, but you're throwing it to nobody.
yeah.
Can't throw it
But
to you.
that's right, but that's the one I think the the really difficult part of that is it's a skill to learn how to put people in the right seats, right?
Yeah.
And build a team that way. And you have to develop that skill. And I think, a lot of entrepreneurs or podcasts like this will say, hey, give me 3 or 4 books that, you should read at the end, right? And it's really dependent on what your needs are and where you are in your own growth right now and where you're at in your development, right? And I would say for me, that's kind of where I'm starting to read more on, because I think that's where I kind of need for my next stage of growth, as I try to build a larger team. And it's tough to acquire all the skills, and you can't. Your brain's going to be tossing out information constantly that doesn't find relevant anymore, right? You really got to build the team. So I'm looking forward to that challenge, but I know it's a lot of work.
Yeah. On that note, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome discussion. Good luck with your growth, and let's do this again in the future, and we'll kind of catch up from where we left off today to where you end up in the future. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome. I appreciate the time. I learned a lot even just on this call, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Me too. Bye bye.
So yeah.